Welcome back. The story broke in the Washington Post gossip column, and the mainstream media have given it only modest attention or treated it like gossip. Mary Cheney, the vice president's daughter, is pregnant. But on talk radio and on the blogs, there's been plenty of debate about a lesbian couple. Cheney refers to her longtime partner, Heather Poe, as her wife, choosing to have a baby, especially since her father is part of an administration that wants a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage, an issue that Mary Cheney addressed on CNN last May.
Same-sex marriage is obviously an issue that we can disagree on and that this country needs to debate. But the notion of amending the Constitution and basically writing discrimination into the Constitution of the United States is fundamentally wrong.
Joining us now, John Aravosis, who blogs at AmericaBlog.com. And in New York, Kevin McCullough, radio talk show host at WMCA, who blogs at townhall.com and is also the author of MuscleHead Revolution, Overturning Liberalism with Common Sense Thinking. John Aravosis, are the media uncomfortable with covering Mary Cheney's pregnancy, and is that why some are treating it as gossip?
I think they were very uncomfortable the first 24 hours. You initially saw, I think, like an AP story or something that was 2 paragraphs, and you kind of, as if it was just sort of a little, oh, and by the way, the #1 lesbian in America is pregnant, and she's a Republican. Okay. But then I think within about 24, 48 hours, they got into the gist of the story, which is the conflict of what does the right wing of the party think when this is a party that was elected on family values, quote unquote, and now you've got the #1 man, Dick Cheney, whose daughter is single, unmarried, gay, and having a kid out of wedlock. That's an interesting story.
But Kevin McCullough, why should Mary Cheney's personal decision to have a baby be picked apart by the media and by some conservative groups just because her father is vice president?
Well, let me set the record straight first here. The reaction from the left has been much more vehement than the reaction from the right. And if you'll look carefully at the sources on the right, you will see that there was actually a debate over whether those on the right should even address the acknowledgement or not. Significant conservatives like Hugh Hewitt, The Corner, many other blogs decided until Mary speaks about this personally, we're not going to make public comment on it. There were a handful of others, myself, Focus on the Family, columnist Ben Shapiro, that have offered questions about it. But one thing that I've been impressed by is that those on the right have chosen to talk about the larger issues, not focusing expressly on Mary, while those on the left have gotten pretty nasty about their intent to take down the vice president. One blog, CultureKitchen.com, actually was sporting baby gear for purchase that quizzed things like who is the real father of Mary Cheney's baby and so forth. That kind of attack on the vice president is really what the left wants to see happen from this story. The right wants to talk about the larger issues.
Actually, we're ecstatic that she's having the baby. I mean, I think this is a really, it's a massive story. What you've got is Mary Cheney is not Chelsea Clinton when she was back in the White House at 13 years old. You have a 37-year-old woman who ran the campaign of the vice president. I mean, she is a professional. She was the head of a gay advocacy organization. She was the gay liaison for Coors. I mean, this woman is openly lesbian, has been a gay advocate, ran the vice president's campaign when this was a campaign based on family values.
So why are you so happy about this?
It's a huge story. Well, no. I mean, A, I'm happy she's having a baby. That's great. B, I think it's a fascinating story in terms of the rift. I think what the other guest just said shows our point. There's an incredible story here that half the right thinks it's a horrible, unconscionable, was what one of the religious right groups called this pregnancy, whereas the other half, according to our guest, and he's probably right, thinks, oh my God, this is private, we don't want to touch it. That right there is a story.
Kevin McCullough, you mentioned Focus on the Family. In the new issue of Time magazine, James Dobson, the head of that organization, writes that in raising these issues, Focus on the Family does not desire to harm or insult women such as Cheney and Heather Poe. Rather, our conviction is that birth and adoption are the purview of married, heterosexual
They
couples.
Want to harm women in the abstract,
well, let me get to Kevin.
Yeah.
So actually, while avoiding any direct insults, some conservative groups are basically saying this is a terrible thing that the vice president's daughter is doing.
Look, Howard, you cannot get away, nor can John, nor can anyone else, from the moral components of what makes a baby. That is what the fundamental discussion of this issue is created by. The difference, and I continue to say this, John's blog itself ran a contest to nominate who you think the top 10 candidates for Mary Cheney's father, the father of her baby, was. That shows the pettiness, the shallowness of those on the left in terms of how they want to bring a black mark against the vice president. Those on the right are having a much more philosophical, ideological discussion saying,
oh, yes,
are these the type of issues that we should be addressing, and what composes a family? That's a legitimate discussion to have.
Petty and shallow?
What we're talking about today, Howie, is the media coverage and how they feel about covering Mary Cheney. And the fact remains that Mary Cheney is the Murphy Brown of the year 2000. What we had a Vice President, Dan Quayle, 15 years ago now, criticizing a fictitious single mom on TV for choosing to have a baby. Now we have the Vice President's daughter who ran his campaign, who's lesbian, unmarried, but claims she's married to another woman, having a kid out of wedlock, choosing to have that kid while the Vice President's still in office. That's it's a
what
huge
anybody
story.
who zeroes in on this is doing. I mean, she is hardly the first gay couple to have a baby through artificial insemination.
That makes my point,
Howard.
Howard.
If Chelsea Clinton right now, who's 24, 25, I don't know, engaged, decided to have a baby, it would be the story in America because she's Chelsea Clinton, even if she's straight. If you are Mary Cheney, we are talking about gay marriage. We talked about amending the U.S. Constitution to stop these people from having a legitimate relationship, and now they're saying it's not a story. Excuse me, either it's a story or it's not a story. Either it's private and you stay out of my Constitution, or we talk about it nationally. You can't have both ways.
Howard, John is proving my point. The terms, all of the terms identifying Mary Cheney's sexuality and so forth have been identified by your guest who comes from the left on this. Right. They are trying to use this as a wedge issue to discredit the Cheneys, to drive a wedge between them as family members.
Fight over this,
and this is not going to be something that the Vice President is going to allow to happen. Every time someone has tried to drive a wedge between he and his daughter, no matter what their differences on this issue, the Vice President has stood faithful to say, this is my family, I love my daughter, and you can't come between us.
Kevin, let me
They're
jump
trying
in.
to drive that wedge. He's not going to let them do it.
Kevin, I need a quick answer. Do you believe the coverage of this in the mainstream media is too favorable because journalists don't see this as particularly controversial?
Probably so. I mean, that's why the Post and the Times and so many, I mean, there were 1,200 outlets that had stories on it the day after it came out. I think that they do think this is public fodder because she's a public figure. Those of us on the right, we've been conflicted in how we've decided to cover it.
All right, we've got to go, John Arvosis.
I'm glad that Kevin thinks gay marriage is an issue we should all embrace and not be controversial. Thanks,
Kevin McCullough, thanks very much. When we come back, why the Wall Street Journal is thinking small.